Students, today I would talk about group dynamics. Before I talk about group dynamics, let me talk about groups. What exactly do we mean by a group? Group is where two or more people come together to achieve a common goal. Uh, for example, we have a group of software developers who come to develop a software, and then we have a group of testers who test that software, whether it's functioning right or not. So the testers would be given the training according to their uh, the group activity which they perform, and the developers will be clubbed into one group. Similarly, based on the language that the software, the coding language that each of the members are using, based on that, the groups are further segregated, like the group of C developers, group of Java developers. These are like different groups. This is just an example of what a group is all about. What exactly do we mean by group dynamics? Group dynamics deals with the attitudes and behavioral pattern of the group. It deals with the attitude of the people in the group. Group dynamics concerns how groups are formed, what is the structure, and which process are they following in their functioning. Thus, it is concerned with the interaction and forces operating within the groups. Group dynamics is relevant to groups of all kinds, like formal groups, informal groups. So before I go deep into the subject of group dynamics, let me explain what a group is all about. Every organization, as I said, has groups. A organization divides itself into different groups so that the work becomes easy. A group refers to two or more people who share a common meaning and an evaluation of themselves and come together to achieve a common goal. For example, if, as I've already told, I took an example of software developers. People who develop softwares form a group. People who test softwares form a group. People who implement softwares form a group. This is just an example of what a group is all about. In other words, a group is a collection of people who interact with one another. They accept the rights, obligations as a member, and who share a common identity. What exactly do we mean by identity? For example, I join a certain welfare organization, that becomes my identity. I join an NGO, that becomes my identity. Let me take an example of an NGO. Why do people join NGOs? NGOs are basically groups of people who perform certain activities like helping others, fighting for the rights of people. These are groups. Like, the objective is to fight for the rights of people. So let me explain you further about the characteristics of group. Like already told you, two or more people come form a group. One single man can't say that I am a part of a group. They have a formal social structure, that is, they'll have a CEO, they'll have a treasurer, they'll have trustees, and if not, like, there are different structures of a group. For example, in one group we'll just have one boss, and then everybody is a member of that group. For example, there are many groups in which we have a group leaders, and then we have one CEO. So these groups, why do they form? Why are these people interested, and why are they connected in a group? Because they have a common goal. And one of the characteristics was they have a face-to-face interaction. In these days after COVID, I can't say that there's a face-to-face interaction between the groups, but yes, they interact daily, maybe through a webinar, through a seminar, or through Zoom calls. They just interact with each other to achieve that common goal. They are interdependent. They are interdependent. The interdependency is because of each and every member in the group has a uh, certain skill. So they are interdependent. For example, a group of lecturers are interdependent amongst. I mean, I as a group of academicians. I am one of the academicians, so I am interdependent on other academicians. We all have a common goal of teaching the people, teaching the students. So that is the interdependency. So that's now coming to the next part, that is this recognition of members of the group. For example, a person who says that he is a part of a teaching fraternity, he is recognized as a teacher. And there are certain stages for a group to form. It is not like that. It's not like a group all of a sudden it forms and it starts functioning. The first stage is people come together. They seek. They come together with common interest, where the common goals. They come together and then they do the storming. They do the brainstorming. They identify what their problem is. If they have already identified, then they just discuss the problem and then they decide which tasks to be performed, what are the tasks that need to be performed, and then they start performing the task. For example, if people come with a common interest of say if they are fighting for child labor, if they are against child labor, so like 5 to 10 people who might have a common interest, who might be pained by the child labor, they come together, they form a group, then they decide like, okay, we have to get, then they define a strategy. Okay, we have to go to these shops, we have to go to these industries where we can find child laborers, and then we can fight against this evil of child labor. And then they come to then they start performing their activities. Like they decide, okay, you have to go to this certain area and you have to go to this certain area, and these 10 members have to go to a certain area. Based on that, they perform their activities. The next thing is not in an NGO, but yes, in a team who's performing a project. For example, a group of laborers, once the project is done, say a construction project is done, they adjourn. Now let me come to the types of groups. One way to classify the groups is by the way of by like the formal groups or informal groups. Formal groups are established by organization to achieve its goal. Informal groups are spontaneous. Formal groups may take long. They might form because of the command groups like task group, functional groups. These are the form of formal groups. Informal groups are like a group of classmates. They come together. They say let's have an alumni function, and that's an informal conversation, and that's an informal group. So when we come to formal groups, we have command groups. What do we mean by command groups? Command groups are specified by the organizational chart and often consists of supervisor and subordinates that report to that supervisor. An example of command group is a market research firm. There will be having a CEO, then we have marketing managers, and then we have assistant managers, and then we have team leads, and then we have the entire team. So this is the command group. Now coming to the task group. Task group consists of people who work towards achieving a common task. Members are brought together to accomplish a narrow range of goals within a specified time period. Task groups are also commonly referred to as task force. The organization appoint members and assign a goal and tasks to be accomplished. For example, whenever a new product is being launched, so we'll be having a production group, a marketing group. So once the product is launched, these groups are dissolved. The marketing group will continue, but yes, the group that was formed to initiate the marketing strategy, that group will be dissolved and it will be converted to the regular group, marketing group. Other common tasks for example, as I always take this example of software engineers. Once the project is assigned, once they have a task group is formed. Once the project is accomplished, once the software is implemented successfully, then the task is resolved, and then the same group members from, like, we have say 10 groups. So members based on their abilities, those out of those 10 groups, people will be picked from, like a software developer will be picked from each of these groups, and like testers will be picked up from each of these 10 groups, and then one more task will be, and they'll be assigned one more task, and one more task group is formed. We also have the third type of group, that is functional groups. Functional groups is created by organization to accomplish a specific goal within a unspecified time. For example, a functional group remains in existence after achieving a current goal and objectives. The best example of functional group would be marketing department, a customer service department, or an accounting department, because the marketing department continues to work and accounting department would continue to publish the accounting details. They would continue doing their accounts. So these are functional groups. In contrast to formal groups, informal groups are formed naturally and is responsible. In these informal groups are based on common interest and shared values of individuals. They are created for purpose other than like accomplishment of organizational goals. A group of friends, do you think they have an organizational goal? No, they do not have an organizational goal. They just come, enjoy and leave. They come for, like, they share a common memory. The goal is to share a common memory. They have the they have a very common interest. For example, school friends, do you think they have any any goal of making money out of their group? No, they just come, and yes, few schools, like for school alumni, they have this, they later turn into common NGOs, so that they have some topic to discuss. And informal groups are not appointed by the organization, as I've already said, and members can invite others to join the group from time to time. Like, for example, a political party, okay, to a certain extent, yes, they are informal, but after a certain stage they become formal group, because once they join a bigger organization, then they become a formal group. Informal groups can have a strong influence in the organization that can either be positive or negative. In an organization also we have informal groups. For example, employees who form an informal group, who can discuss the production process, who, like for example, people who have a common habit of going to visiting cafeteria at a certain point of time, that forms an informal group. This is what about all about formal and informal groups. Now coming to interest groups. Interest group usually continue over time and may last longer than general, like informal groups. Members of interest group may not be a part of the same. Now let me talk about interest groups. Interest group usually, they continue over time and last longer than general informal groups. members of interest group might not be a part of the same organization, or they might not be a part of the same department, but they bond together by some other common interest. The goals and objectives of interest groups are specific to each other, and they may be related to the organizational goals and objectives. An example of interest group would be like students who come together to form a study group for a specific class. For example, I see a certain group of your seniors who usually come and they discuss finance. Even during the lunch hours, they sit and they talk about finance. They talk about the stock markets, talk about different different subtopics and topics of finance, because there is a common interest. We have people who discuss about HR, and we have people who discuss about politics. That's a common interest. And then we have this friendship groups. Friendship groups are like, they are formed by members who enjoy like similar social activity, like, or they might it might happen because of their common political belief, their religious values, or all these are like common factors that leads to friendship groups. We also have these like members who enjoy each other's company, and often like after work, as I often give an example of the hobby of having tea, because that's a very common habit I usually see, like people bond over that habit. So that's like, for example, I mean that's a very common hobby, and they say like, okay, let's go to certain restaurant today, and then tomorrow we'll go to certain restaurant because let's test and taste the tea. So this is like the interest. This is a common interest in the formal group, in the friendship group. Now let's come to the third part, that is the reference group. Who are you referred to as? For example, if I am a part of certain, if a person is a part of a certain cricket team, so he is referred to as, okay, he is a member of that group. If a person is a member of certain political or certain religious, certain ideological group, then he is referred to, that group become his identity. A reference group is type of group that people use to evaluate themselves. A main objective of the reference group are like seeking social validation, like social comparison. These are like the social validation allows individuals to justify their attitude and values, while social comparison helps individuals evaluate their own actions by comparing themselves to others. So there is a difference between social validation and social comparison. Validation is like, if he is a part of the reference group, then he used that certain references in that group to validate whether the person is a part of that group or not. And then social comparison within that group, like if he is performing well in that group or not, is like social comparison. Reference groups have a very strong influence on the member group behavior. I mean, the member's behavior depends on the reference group. Such groups are formed voluntarily, like as I have already told, like religious groups, ideological groups. I mean, these are formed voluntarily. So now coming to the other part, that like factors affecting the group behavior. It's a very different topic which I wanted to talk about, like factors affecting the group behavior. What are the factors? The first thing is group member resources. For example, the members' knowledge, abilities, skills, their personalities. If they are not acceptable by the group, if they are not what a group needs, then, and if they join that group just for the sake of it, then it becomes they become a burden on the group. For example, I usually give this example. If a person doesn't know what a 2 BHK and what a 3 BHK is, and if he joins a real estate syndicate, do you think the real estate brokers or the real estate commission agents will entertain that person? Unless he has that skill, unless he has that ability, no group member would allow that person to join that group. Okay, if in case by some hook or crook he might join the group, but he will not be a successful group member because he will not be contributing to the group. And that behavior, I mean that if he is not contributing to the group, then that will lead to certain unrest among the other members, and then either he might be kicked out of the group, or either he might be lying there somewhere. I mean, he might be there just as a non-performer of the group. So the knowledge, the skill set, and all these things of skill set and everything of the group member plays a larger role in the effectiveness of the group. This is one of the key factors affecting the group behavior. And group structure, I mean, if the group size is more, then if there are many people who are involved in decision making, then it becomes very difficult for the group to survive, because everybody, like if you have lakhs and lakhs members of a ideology, then if each and every member is a part of decision making, then it becomes very difficult for the group to survive. So in that case, what do? They have certain leaders who are a part of the core committee, then only that committee is involved into core decision making. Other than that, everybody is like, they come, they enjoy, and then they leave. I mean, they are a part of the group, they perform as a group, they work for the group, but they are not into the decision making. I mean, group roles, this is like, in formal groups we have like many group roles which are predetermined. For example, marketing manager's role is predetermined, HR manager's role is predetermined, finance manager role is predetermined. But if all these roles are not determined, and if a person is like, if he has joined an organization, if he is supposed to just work as a manager and without a clear-cut role, then it leads to conflicts with the other managers. So that is like group roles. These are the group roles. Other things are like there are many other aspects of group roles, like blocking roles are. I mean, what do we mean by blockers? For example, we have a group wherein we have developers, we have maintenance roles. Let's take an example of construction industry. We have people who construct building, then we have people who maintain building, and then we have people who check that the maintenance is being done. The maintenance is carried out by other people, and just to check if the maintenance is being done, we have a certain group of gatekeepers. I mean, for example, if in a group of say lakhs and lakhs of people in a huge group, then we have certain people who check whether this person is attending the regular meeting, whether he is participating or just he is claiming the benefits of the group. So these are the group roles. Then we have group norms. What do we mean by group norms? Group norms are like rules of the group. The rules of the group are like, let me give you an example of our teaching fraternity in our college. The rule is, though there is not defined, but yes, it is known that teachers are not supposed to wear informal dress and when they come to the class. So what happens is, that is like a general rule. They are expected to wear a formal dress, they are expected to be as formal as possible, they are expected to like come to college before 9:30. They are expected not to log out before 4:30. There are certain rules. They themselves have to maintain decorum. They just can't talk as and when they feel like talking. I mean, it's not like they have to be very decent when they talk. So if in case this is like, these are the like the norms of the one group, that is the teaching fraternity. So if what happens if a person doesn't follow these rules, it might be like okay once in a while if a person wears a informal dress and if he comes to the college, but depending on the situation, depending on the day, like if it is if it is Sunday and if it is like, then if he wears a informal dress, then it might be okay. It's not like okay. It depends on the situation. So if in case a person deliberately breaks the rule again and again, then the person might be given a warning, and the next thing is there might be some disciplinary action taken against him. So as a part of a group, a person has to follow the norms. Okay. Now coming to group cohesiveness. What do we mean by cohesiveness? Cohesiveness is bonding. It refers to, like, for example, we have like 4 or 5 people in a class who are very close to each other. So that forms a cohesive group. They have a certain understanding, they have a different bonding. So the cohesiveness refers to the bonding of a group members, the feeling of attractiveness as a part of the group. For example, if people have this hobby of, if they have a common interest of playing cricket after the college, then that's a cohesive, the factor of playing cricket forms a cohesive factor. If they have the habit of, if they are very much interested into drama, so they wait after the college hours so that they can perform their theatre, and then they can talk about theatre, and then they can discuss dramas, and that is the cohesive factor. So even in the work group culture, if we have employers and employees, we have many cohesive factors that make people work. The cohesive factors, the more cohesive factors we have in a group, the more productivity we'll have, because the cohesive factors will have many positive effects, including like workers' satisfaction. Like that will lead to less absenteeism, and that more and more people will come to work for the organization if they have this cohesiveness. Then that leads to more productivity, and that leads to more effective functioning of the organization and efficient functioning of the organization. Like if they are more cohesive, then there are certain aspects that might come, like groupthink might occur. Groupthink, what do we mean by groupthink? Groupthink occurs when members of the group exert pressure on each other to come to consensus in decision making. For example, we have like group A and group B in our class. Both the cohesive factor in the group is say cricket, and out of those 10 people, 6 people say that they said that the ground A is good for cricket, and remaining 4 are not in favor of playing cricket in that ground. So what happens is, in a cohesive group wherein we have a very close bonding, there is the emotional bonding also. So these people, 6 people who say that the ground A is good to play cricket, this will try to influence the remaining 4 people and pressurize them, so that they also change their decision, and they also say that okay fine, ground A is good to play cricket better than ground B, which they were thinking all the while. So this is one of the disadvantages of cohesiveness. But many organizations have found that there are many motivational factors, like group members are more likely to participate in decision making and problem solving activities when there is a cohesiveness. And more these motivational factors are, the more people will feel happy about working for the organization. And the more they are happy and satisfied about working for the organization, the productivity will improve. That in turn will improve and will get translated into the profit margin. With the profit, then that will in turn lead to more profits of the company. And then we have this team building. This is not the exact topic of this discussion, but yes, I think that it's better I talk about it, because it is related to this topic, but yes, it's not directly related. So this is a very interesting topic for the people who love to talk about team building. We have 8 C's of team building. That is like clear expectation. What do we expect from the members of the team? Commitment. Commitment is like, what is the goal that we have to achieve, and what each of the members have to commit. Competence. Whether each of the member is competent enough to work for the team. Control. Whether there is one person who is controlling the entire process, entire team. Collaboration. Whether each and everybody is collaborating. If there is no collaboration, then the team will not work perfectly. And then we have this communication, whether the flow of communication is perfect or not. Then we have this creativity. If we have more people, we have more creativity, and if we have more creativity, that might lead to conflict, but yes, that might also lead to very fruitful results. Because if we have one person who is creative than the other person, then that leads to overall better results. And the coordination, whether each and everybody is in coordination. I often give this example of software developers and testers. If the software team is within the team itself, if the development team is in coordination, if all the members are in coordination with each other, and if the development team is in coordination with the testers team, and if the testers team is in the coordination with the implementers team, all these lead to the coordination between different teams, where coordination within the teams lead to the success of the organization. That leads to more cohesiveness. Cohesiveness, in other words, is like bonding. And usually when this, as I've already told, like if we have a smaller team, we have more cohesiveness. And interaction, interpersonal communication, as I've already told, is and how frequently are they communicating, and whether the group is enjoying their the group members are enjoying their affiliation to the group. That also matters a lot in the group cohesiveness. So if in case there are any other issues, are the members sticking to the group? So these are the factors of group cohesiveness. Other factors that influence the group cohesiveness are dependency on the group. If more and more members are dependent on the group, then the group is more cohesiveness. The size, as I've already told, size also matters a lot. If there is a big group, then the cohesiveness might not be that great. And if the membership is like stable or not. For example, if every year there is a renewal of the membership, then the group might not be very cohesive. And location, if the members of the group are located in different geographies, then it becomes difficult for the group to be cohesive. And the leadership, if the leaders are the main source for cohesiveness, if the leaders are effectively managing the group, and if there is less conflicts, then that leads to more cohesiveness. If we have like outside pressure, when there is a pressure from outside, like other group members, then there is a chance that the group cohesiveness is less. But there are certain situations wherein the group cohesiveness improves because of the other pressures. For example, if other team says, other person, other ideology or the other group says that this group is they are constantly trying to demotivate this group, then that factor becomes a cohesive factor for the group, and they start working towards the image of their group. And competition, if there is an intergroup, intra-group healthy competition amongst people, then that leads to more cohesive groups. If there is, if the competition is not healthy, then it leads to unhealthy competition will lead to like the group cohesiveness decreases. Okay, so let me close the topic for the today, and then we'll meet some other day. Maybe like tomorrow or day after, and then we can discuss the other topics like conflict management.